Okay, welcome, Miss Lubo. Welcome to the talk with Let's Talk About Therapy with Coach Irma. Um, I am so happy you said yes. I am honored that you said yes. My hair's standing out like I'm about to fly. Um, so we're gonna get started. Let me see if I can, because I'm a visual person, so I had
Gotcha.
to prepare a little slideshow to help me out. Let's see if I can start sharing. Okay, I wish I had an assistant to help me do this. Ah,
You have to put it in the atmosphere. It'll come. It'll come.
oh, eventually, right?
It'll come.
Yes. First, let's welcome everybody. Welcome, everyone. Hopefully, they will see us on Facebook Live. And join us. We are talking today about Let's Talk. We want to welcome our subject matter expert today, my beautiful cousin, Shireen Lubo. Shireen Lubo is a licensed master social work. Um, I was over her house, my aunt's house, over the holidays, and we got to sit down and talk. And I'm like, oh my God, this is no longer my baby cousin. This is a full-blown professional. So I said, we need to, can we do a talk about this? Because this is such a great opportunity to talk to people in our community. Let me go over your bio. Shireen Lubo is a licensed master social worker with over 13 years of experience in the mental health field. She holds a bachelor's in strategic communication from Temple University and a master's in social work from Fordham University. Shireen has provided counseling services in residential facilities, hospitals, and outpatient settings that serves children, teens, and adults. Her work focuses on individual and group therapy, including cognitive behavioral therapy, family systems, trauma-focused therapy, and crisis intervention. Currently, she's a program director for a senior supportive housing program in the Bronx, New York, and a staff at a staff psychotherapist with Smith Psychotherapy in Rockland County, New York. With both roles, she's dedicated to helping individuals and couples to enhance their strengths, to overcome challenges, and attain personal growth. This is a big job. This is a big job. This is
Sure.
people's personal life, personal psyche. Every time I read this bio, I feel so proud of the woman that you have become. And going through these pictures that your mother provided yesterday to me, I'm like, look at this is the baby that I remember. You were coming home as a little teeny baby. I would take you to the mall in a stroller and go shopping on a Saturday. Um, I was so proud of um, you as a baby. I took your pictures to school and show people my pretty baby cousin. And I didn't realize you look like your mom so much.
Oh yeah.
This picture, I'm like, okay, she looks like Shireen. Um, so this is Shireen over the years. I'm busting through the seam with pride because I see you, I watch you grow into this, and I'm just so proud of you.
Thank you.
Uh, yes, this is your high school picture,
Yeah.
graduation. It's amazing. Now, with the with the first communion picture, I see you standing in front of a microphone. Does that mean you knew then you were created for greatness?
I, I guess.
You were smiling, you did. You were smiling. Um, so I'm so proud of you. That's all I can say. I can say it enough that you know, they invest a lot in you, and to see the
Yeah.
fruit, parents' fruit of so much they invest in this Catholic school and colleges. And I remember when you were in Temple, I kind of visited you at the at the dorm. And Maya says, "You don't do that. You don't go to people's colleges." I didn't know.
My
So
mom is
thank
waiting for me outside.
No, I said, let me check on my child because on my cousin, because I don't know what's going on. I haven't seen her, I haven't talked to her. I was in the area, so I said, let me stop by. I remember where she was. Um, but I was told it was a no-no, so I couldn't do that to her, Shireen, then because I knew.
I did, yes.
I'm going to stop sharing for a little bit,
Okay.
although it's so hard to stop sharing. Um, I'll show them later. So let's get right into it. What is therapy and why is therapy so taboo in our community?
Therapy is basically a modality that basically you practice to talk about your concerns or issues that is playing a disruption in your life some way, somehow, with someone who provides a sounding board who's not a direct part of that. And why is it so taboo is because it has a negative stigma. So, meaning that you're not supposed to take your problems outside of, what's going on in a sense. You're not supposed to take your problems outside of like, your family or your friendships. You don't want people to know about your business. You don't want that negative shade or light upon you. And if you do tell, then people know, and then like, it's more of like a shame game in that sense. So
Mhm.
it's more so of a cultural thing, like, you keep it within the family, you keep it hush. If you keep it
Mhm.
quiet, then no one knows, no one can judge you based on it. And that is a horrible thing because sometimes you have to let things out and you have to process them. And that's the goal of therapy. You don't have to tell people, I always say this, you don't have to tell people you're going to therapy. They'll see it as long as you're doing the work, in that
Mm.
sense. So that's pretty much it.
Okay. Do you think we at a place where we are moving the shame out of it? Because there's a lot going on with mental health, especially the Gen Zs. Are they the Gen Zs? Yeah, the Gen Zs, they would tell you in a minute, I'm taking a mental day, a mental health day, um, which was unheard of before. And I think I've heard a lot more about it since COVID. So do
Mm-hmm.
you think the stigma, we are destigmatized with all these awareness that are going on, or is it at the same rate that people are not taking advantage of the service?
I think it depends on the person and also the generation. So, I'm first generation, born in America. So I feel like
Mm-hmm.
I always say like, cause I have, American values instilled into me because of schooling. So I have the two-sided view of everything. So I know basically how it is. And I think if you are in a situation or a household or whatever, and that you're carrying on old ways with you, then it doesn't matter if the world is changing around you, your immediate world is not. So it doesn't relate to you. So like, some people be like, oh, we sit down and have dinner together, right? That's like a common thing. But some people don't do that. That's not, but that's considered normal, in that sense. So it's more so of basically socializing it to the everyone that,
Mm-hmm.
talking about your problems and going to therapy is important and sharing about it. in that sense.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's a benefit to know to have two different culture and see how people answer differently. I always say I would love to study psychology so that I can understand people's behavior, but I don't know. I think I have enough specialists in my family that I can call on so that I don't have to do that. So what are some misconceptions about therapy?
Someone telling you that you're wrong about how you living your life and what you're doing. Another misconception is not easily accessible to them. Another misconception is the person providing the service is not relatable in
Mm,
that sense. I know specifically for my practice, it is African American based, Black women specifically. It's just a
mm,
coincidence. It's like that, but that's what it is. And, you know, and I see people of different cultures. It's not just simply people of that and things of that nature. It's, I do, just like you just gave a summary of who I am, like there's a summary of who I
mhm,
am on Psychology Today and things, so they can read up on me, but my background of who raised me or something never has come up immediately, like what did your parents do when you said, like, you see that. But I think
mhm,
like that having that and like being relatable is very big, and also knowing that therapy is not for everybody. And when I say therapy is not for everybody, there's different ways to get therapy, in a sense of like sometimes speech therapy is not. Sometimes I tell people sometimes you have to start small. Like maybe you have to journal your thoughts out on paper sometimes, like instead of talking,
mhm,
you maybe you're not ready to speak to someone who can respond back. Or some people,
mhm,
I tell them maybe, a lot I say in the culture, like, with the whole WhatsApp sending voice notes, sometimes maybe you should record yourself. Like you don't necessarily have to play it back. Maybe you need to physically release your thoughts out, and possibly record it in that sense. If it's pretty much, if you have a hobby or something, I say get it out in that. Like some people take up, kickboxing. They want to, do they want to run the New York City Marathon? And that's a way they get a source of therapy in itself. So I say like that's a way of doing it as well.
okay. I did think of it this way. Okay. Because, well, I guess what would be missing for me
Mm-hmm.
uh, are the tools because you can get it out of you, but you don't have the tool, especially when it comes to emotion. I'm very
Mm-hmm.
emotional.
Yeah, the emotional regulation of it. Yeah.
Right. That's what would be missing for me because I know my therapist helped me a lot managing my emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So this is we're gonna get real serious with this thing in a minute. Um, when I decided to have the talk, I said, January would be a good time because it's a brand new year and
Mm-hmm.
people are doing their New Year's resolutions. Um, that's why I kind of push it out there. I market the stock by saying, book your checkup.
Mm-hmm.
Book your checkup because um, we tend to take care of our whole entire body,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't pay attention to the mind and the emotions and all these other things that really is super important
Yes.
for us whole. Is there such thing as a whole human being? I don't know. But at least, so I guess my question is, do you suggest that we do? I know when even my primary care now, when I go to my primary care, she asks me, how's your mental health?
Mm-hmm.
Feel depressed? I think that's a great thing. And I don't know if every primary care people are doing it, but I was glad to hear them ask these questions.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is your take on encouraging people to to use their to use the same effort that they put into their physical body, into their mind, into their well-being spiritually, mentally, um, because that's what makes our mental. And if our mental's not right, you can be fit at God
Mhm.
knows what, your mental's not right, you can't function. So can you pull on that a little bit and see if we can get people to a place where they go regularly every year for their physical checkup and mental check, why it's important to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I think one key thing people don't realize, if you're going in annually for your checkup, they usually make you fill out a new questionnaire. And standardly, best practice, they have to ask you questions. And definitely, some of the questions is, do you have, depression? Are you feeling sad? Like, they ask these questions on the questionnaire. Well, I know at least, where I go, they do ask these things. And they even ask you, do you have, issues within your family, your immediate family, with these things?
Yes.
And it's very key. Like, some people don't, because like they need to know, like sometimes people feel more comfortable writing things down versus you have the
Mm-hmm.
conversation. And I think one key thing you did mention is your provider has a good side bed matter. Like, some providers look at you as a number, like literally, like, oh, she came in, she's number two of the day, gotta go. Versus having a conversation and like asking and say, are you okay? Is everything going? Is this just the health issues? Even like sometimes you feel more comfortable telling, like, like their nurse's aide or the physician, is whoever is the person you see before you see the provider, because they're writing everything up to provide it to the provider so they can see you. And your provider is supposed to be like, is there anything else you want to talk about? Because sometimes people don't realize it. Your provider can refer you to somebody and be like, you know
Mm-hmm.
what, I know someone that you should see. I'm going to get you the information. And they literally write the information down, or they give you their business card, because they call networking. Like, they want to help people in their
Mm-hmm.
community. And I think the best thing is, outside of, the physical, it's also, if you're employed, like, I think like employers are doing that now. Like, they're putting it specifically because of
Mm-hmm.
COVID and things of that nature. Like, they're fostering, like, you just said it, like, taking a mental health day, but they want you to get the mental health services you do need. Some of them have what's called employee assistance programs, which is called EAP, in that
Mm-hmm. I
sense.
love
So
that.
yeah, so like some of them do have those options. And also, even, down to like educating and the pamphlets, like, you get reminders, even if you have insurance, they send you something in the mail about
Right.
wellness and self-care management, your insurance. So it's like a very big push on a higher level, to get people support. And I think one thing we have to do is continue the cycle. And when you do go, like, for me, I could use, my parents, like, they retired, for instance. Like, I'd be like, are you okay? Like, you tell me you go to the doctor. You don't have to tell me what you're going to the doctor for, but I'm like, did you tell the doctor everything that's going on? And I think,
Mm.
encouraging them to talk to someone if they don't want to share it with, their child, or their brother or their sister
Right.
immediately. And I think that's all you have to
Mm.
do. You have to make sure you're checking on your physical and your mental as well, because
Mental.
it's going to break down. Like, if you're not right here, eventually it'll hit everywhere else. Because sometimes people don't realize it, when you don't take care of your physical, like, you can get what's called, basically, sometimes people are depressed because of a medical situation. Sometimes people are depressed because of their environment. If you change their environment, then all of a sudden their whole sense of emotional dysregulation changes. And those are usually
Mm-hmm.
circumstantial in that sense. So it's like, and people could get diagnosed with that. You have depression due to a chronic medical condition. It's not because you just depressed because of, a trauma, or some you lost, a loved one or something of that nature. So all those come into play.
So there's depression that comes because of an incident,
Yes.
and there are people that are naturally depressed,
Yes.
suffers from depression.
Yes.
Okay. Ralph, great debate on very important subject. Congrats. Thank you, Ralph. Thank you
Thank
very much.
you.
OC is on. Welcome, guys. Welcome, OC. Maggie Mion is on. Two other people are watching with you. Wonderful. Thank you, guys. You can, if you have questions, please feel free to put it. I'll pay attention to it some more um, while we dissect this subject, this very, very important subject that is going on in our community, within us, with all of us, within our family.
Yeah.
Um, can you explain, Shireen, the difference between the types of therapy and how they cater to different needs? You just talked about sometimes somebody's under a lot of that happened to me. I'm under a lot of pressure at work. You
Mm-hmm.
get depressed because it's constant, it's every day. It's like you drag yourself to the job that you don't like. So usually that depression leaves when you don't go to that job, to that area, to
Mm-hmm.
the space, or if something's happening at home, you it automatically it lifted if you depress in a area, in the atmosphere. Um, so can you pull on that a little bit to the type of therapy that would be needed for somebody who has depression problems and somebody who's just depressed because they're going through something? How do you approach these two things?
So if I'll go the hot, like, the severity route. So if someone is, is severely depressed, it's usually you have to ask them specific types of questions. It's very
Mhm.
what we call person centered. You have to really listen to them for key things because usually when
Mhm.
someone's severely depressed, they reach a breaking point to where their existence here doesn't make sense to them anymore. So you have to formulate things where you have to see if they are, how depressed are they? And you have to be specific in a sense of you have to be very sensitive in what kind of language you use with them. Because if
Mm.
you say depressed, they might not respond to that. So you might say you're sad or use language they use. Today's not my day. How bad today was not your day? On a scale of 1 to 5, was it like a 1 or was it a 5? Sometimes then you have to go back with them and check in with them and say, and you balance it out a little. You don't be too negative in a sense with it. You can ask them flat out, do you feel comfortable in this setting at this time? And I'm like,
Mm.
are you comfortable with having this conversation? Because sometimes, specifically, especially with younger people who are depressed, sometimes they don't want to
Mm.
talk and they just want to sit there. And you be like, well, if you're going to sit there, I'm going to talk. So, sometimes you have to make up things like, they pull out a word from a hat and I'm going to talk about the word. Sometimes, and you have to build it. Sometimes you're going to be dealing with this person will come back to you and still not talk, and you saw them 4 times already. But that the thing is, they're coming back in
They're
that
coming
sense.
back.
Yes. And
Mhm.
then when you think about it, someone who's more on the mild side of it, where theirs goes up and down, it's not all the time, but it doesn't exist to a point like they might shut down in that sense, or they might be high functioning. Sometimes people forget that there's people who are very high functioning and they're depressed. And I think key people that we label as high functioning depression is usually famous and rich people, people we can like point out, like, you're famous, you're rich, you're on TV, and then all of a sudden they're no longer here because they ended their life, right? They couldn't function. They couldn't, even though it looked like on the outside they were doing so great, but they really were dying inside of something. And no matter
Mm.
what they support they got, the void never got filled. Because also, one thing I do is I contract and say, are you okay with this never possibly going away? And they look at you like, what? I thought that's why we're here, for it to go away. I said, we're here for it to be managed because you can't predict when you're going to be upset or someone's going to make you sad, or you're going to have a traumatic event. So you have to agree to like, this may not go away. How can we manage it in that sense? And what plan can we put in
Uh-huh.
place, or who we can put in place where you feel like you're at your brinking, you can go to this person and this person agreed for you to be that person they go to, or the activity you can do to help calm you down and remove yourself from a situation in that sense. So
Mm.
that's pretty much it. So it depends on the modalities. Sometimes people can do very intense therapy and they have to go to a very like special, a specialist. Like I said, specialist, a specialist. Sometimes people have to go inpatient. Like they literally need to be possibly highly medicated, and things of that nature. I try my best to go the talk therapy route, and then I'll refer out if I feel that medication needs to be there. Luckily for me, I'm pretty well versed in some medications in the sense of I'll go over with like telling them what side effects can happen, how this can change you. Some people won't feel the effects for like weeks. What's the goal of this? Do you want this to, are you okay with taking this medication? It can like how is it looking like for you? And then tracking it and taking them on the journey with it.
So let's
Okay.
see Facebook. We have somebody from Toronto, Kate Excellent. Welcome, Kate. We have some question. What would be a good approach towards someone who needs mental therapy, but feel that they have nothing to gain by seeing a therapist? How can you motivate and convince them to see a therapist?
Is the constant conversation about it. Sometimes you need to put someone in position that they respect and they value in a sense that can be
Mhm.
like and normalize it's okay. Because sometimes if you don't have that person or a way to do it, it's never going to happen. Because just because you love someone and like you're trying to get them there, if they're an adult they can do whatever they want in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more so of you can, if you know something or if you recognize something, because people go on computer and Google all the time what they think is going on with someone. So if you
Mm-hmm.
feel that that's something reputable or like this is exactly what you see in that loved one, then what you can do is I always say try to make that match happen, have an open dialogue, have like a general conversation. Sometimes it can happen at family gatherings and people don't even realize it, in that sense. Or if
Mm-hmm.
you go out for drinks with friends or something, and then you just having a conversation and someone brings up something and someone who could pick up on cues too, in that sense. And you can have that conversation. The thing about it is if you are buying a car, you want an expert, right? So if you can't show a connection to the person that you actually went through something and what you did to get through it, they're not going to listen to you in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you have to be vulnerable with someone to get them like the help they do need. Sometimes you have to like literally bear it and for them to say like, okay, I'll listen to you, I'll do it in that sense. Even if they go for like 2 sessions and they find out it's not for them, at least they tried. But continuously have
Mm-hmm.
that conversation.
I've offered someone to go to therapy with them,
Mm-hmm.
although it had nothing to do with me, but she was so scared to go by herself. Um, and it's a friend.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I would go with you and I can even sit outside of the door while you get what you need. And then a few weeks later, she says, I call the therapist. I'm starting. So that gave me um thing because they do need the support. They do need to know it's not
Mm-hmm.
weird to
Mm-hmm.
go to therapy. I like that.
Yeah, definitely so. And you're a good friend for that.
Wow.
Very good
Life is
friend.
hard. Life be
Yeah,
life.
like some people won't do that at all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How can parents deal with children who are depressed?
Um, you can't assume their depression is because of what you think it is. As a parent, you need to check yourself first, right? Because sometimes
Mm-hmm.
parents, because I see, young people, and their parents give me a story, and then when the kid finally talks, majority of the time, I'm not saying parents are wrong about their children knowing who their children are. What what the parents think is the big thing, it's like this big for the kid in that sense. Like, for example, common thing is sibling dynamics. One parent favors the other kid over the other. Kid flat out said, "My parents think it's my sister. I really don't care about her. I got other things to worry about." Like, so
Mm.
versus sometimes it's not possibly the sibling favoritism in there, like you think is going on, is more so of the availability of the parent to the child in that sense. And also, parents have to check them on themselves in a sense of when your kid is depressed, how long have they been depressed? And if you think the depression just started in that sense, what changed? Like, is it affecting their schooling? Is it affecting their friendships? Oh, they don't hang out with so and so no more. Maybe something happened with so and so or something. Did something happen that you're unaware of? Like in the conversation, some kids are not going to, especially adolescents, they're not going to tell you exactly what's going to happen, per se.
And some of them don't have the language to explain what's going on.
Exactly. They don't.
Yeah.
And, but I always say, think about it. Like a 4-year-old can tell you what's wrong with them. They be like, I just didn't like that. What didn't you not like it? I just feel it wasn't good. Because it's called acknowledgement. Like you have to acknowledge their feelings about a situation. And I think one key thing is if you feel your child, because you unless you a provider yourself, you can't just say my kid is depressed unless someone told you your child is depressed. You're assuming that. And I think you have to know the language too. You can flat out say sometimes, be like, make time for your child. In that sense, you have to, I always say, don't give them too much freedom in the sense of don't let them just do whatever they want because they don't want to talk to you. You have to contract with them. You're like, you know what? I'm gonna give you 2 days. You need to figure it out and have the talk with me. And also investigate. You pay their phone, you pay the light bill, you put food in their mouth. They use if they live in your house, if they have a room, you technically can go in there. Like, I know it's like the invasion of privacy per se, but you possibly have to re-regulate your parenting too and your boundary structure with your child because
It's funny you said that because um, people of color
mm-hmm,
would go to their rooms. They would snatch. They would.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
My children says, "You bust in this room like you the popo." I
mm-hmm,
am.
mm-hmm.
So, um, I think sometimes we do that to a fault. Um, it's funny you said that because some people don't go into their children's room. I don't understand. If I called you 3 times, I'm going in.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Like, what are you doing?
s- yeah. Sometimes after when you go to school, I open the door, something says go in there. I open drawers, I go in.
Mhm. And you're only doing it if
Um,
you're concerned. It's not like you're doing it
yeah.
because you're doing it. Like, then that's a
Mhm.
problem within yourself as a parent. But if you really think your child's depressed, that means that child is showing you signs of where they possibly are not doing well. Top signs for, children are they're not doing well in school. They're regressing in a sense of they're isolating themselves. They tend to sleep a lot or not want to wake up to go to school. um they're not even engaged with you in the home. Is like hi bye, and they will keep it pushing. And you
These
have to watch
babies,
it, like you have to time it. If your kid goes up and down, that's not too, but if it's a steady situation where you see your kid literally for like a whole week is possibly wearing the same thing, not caring how they look, that is a fire alarm in itself. And that means there's been a significant change in their functioning. And they're at a point where they're just, they're overwhelmed with whatever they're going through. It's impacting their ability to do anything. Like they're forgetting meals,
Mhm.
their weight is going up or their weight is significantly going down
Going
in that
down.
sense. And that's when you have to step
Wow.
in as a parent. You have to step in and get them evaluated. And I always say take your make it take it to the doctor first. Like have their
Mhm.
pediatrician see them, and then you voice it to their pediatrician and see if they can refer you to someone who can cater to possibly what you're saying. Or you can do your research as well, because I know everybody's insurance is different. If they are an insurance payer, sometimes people are private pay, they'll pay out of pocket for their child. But I say that like do your research and things of that nature. And also as a parent, you should know your history with anything in mental health. Whether you have trauma, how did you deal with it? How is it manifesting into your child and things of that nature?
I always say, because again, we take our children to the dentist, we take them
Mm-hmm.
for their shots, we take them to the doctor on a regular basis. I always say that if I knew then what I know now, therapy would be a constant thing for us all.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you make it, hopefully that will change with parents that are coming up now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a shame that we didn't have it and we
Mm-hmm.
didn't give it to our children. But hopefully, this generation will pick up with it and go with it to a point where it would be normal to say, I'm going to a therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to see a therapist. After I got a divorce, I think for a little while, we went to therapy. My children and I, we went to therapy. We did a few sessions, and I was told they were fine, they'll be fine. Um, but I needed to continue with it on an ongoing basis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if there's any parents here, new parents that are listening, it is super important to normalize therapy in your household when they are
Mm-hmm.
little right now. What would be a good approach, Ralph asked, towards someone who needs mental therapy but feel that they have nothing to gain by seeing a therapist? How can you motivate and convince them to see a therapist?
That's a good question. I think we touched upon it
Mm-hmm.
earlier. I think you have to build a connection to it. You have to be vulnerable with the person. You have to share what you done or what you know someone else done, or have that person talk to them. Because telling someone they need to see someone and actually showing them the benefits of it is different. And there's a lot of people, I always tell people, I was like, when I go out, I don't tell people what I do for a living. I don't share. I think that's my private life. But if someone comes to me and say, "Hey, I heard that you see, I know what you do." I was like, "How do I do this? This is what I'm going through." I'm like, if you feel comfortable talking to me, a perfect stranger you met through somebody else, why are you not looking up a perfect stranger to talk to them in that sense? And I've gotten like private messages from people that I haven't talked to in years. It's just that they know and they ask and I refer out. And I think specifically with us, I think we need to build a community where we can send someone because they're relatable. And sometimes you have to say like, I know a provider, he's of Haitian descent. I think, and he's a male. I feel like, his background, he specializes in trauma, informed care, something like you go through, you lost your mother. I think this would be a great fit. If you hit all these points, all you can do is do the link in that sense. And they have to show up. And I think therapy is so easily accessible now. Like we're on a computer, right? You can do it on the computer.
Mm-hmm.
I literally, for privacy, I know some people who do with it me virtually. Sometimes they have to do it during their lunch hour because they can't be in their home to do it. or people have to physically leave their home and be on a couch in an office space to do it. So you have so many options to get it. It's so much, everyone's out there. It's more so how do you want to
I,
receive it?
I see on social media, Better Health is pushing it hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I hope it gets to a point where we get to a point where people can afford it. Maybe it's a copay of $50. Maybe we can just pay $50 per visit. I'm hoping we can get there if people don't have insurance not to stop because you cannot put a price on your mental health. Like I said, when mental health is not working, nothing works.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what are some signs that someone might benefit from seeking therapy? We touch on it a little bit. Um, the behaviors. What are we looking for?
So,
We touch on it for children, but not so much for adults.
adults, yes. So
Mhm.
I think I'll use myself as an example. I realized that I have like anxious tendencies that I never knew I had. And then that I can instantly have an anxiety attack and like not don't know how to process it. I always thought I was scared. Everything's scary, right? You assume that, and then you realize like no, there's you have an issue with you know lack of control.
Exactly.
You don't have the control of the environment. I think one key example I learned that in adulthood, it's funny when I think about it, is like getting my lashes done. I do not get my lashes done. I cannot lay literally and have someone tape my lid shut and not be able to open my eyes when I want. I cannot give that power to that person. And it's literally a power thing in my head. So like it's like even though the person is giving me a service, right? Like, but I can't. Like I literally had a panic attack. Young lady did one eye and I had to leave. I'm sorry, I can't do it. And that's just an
Can you do
example.
one side at a
I
time?
literally walked. I wish I had a picture, but I literally had one. And I think and it's okay. Like you have to understand. And that's something I recognize in myself. But also, I had a full panic attack. I think I don't want to say. I want to say it was a full panic attack in Haiti. We went. This was years ago, before COVID. We went to Carnival. First time in Carnival. I don't know what came over me in a sense, but I started hyperventilating, and we literally had to leave. I had to end everybody's night. And then when we end everybody's night, I get in the car, like I'm like profusely like my mind is running like mile a minute. And then the next day we find out like a whole, I think someone caught on fire. I don't know, a child caught on fire in front of the stand we were at. And they were like, well, if we didn't leave when we left, it would have been worse. My panic attack would have been worse. I was like, we all gonna burn. Like it would have been bad. But I said sometimes when you feel uncomfortable in situations and you have support systems, because clearly I was with family and they wanted to have a good time. Clearly they thought about my well-being. They were upset, but I guess my well-being comes first in that sense. And I think that's
Mm,
what you need is that support, someone who can support you when you are having that moment of crisis and they can pull you and take you to safety and that thing. And in your mind, I'm like, I'm sorry, you're apologetic, but yet you have to understand like you couldn't be there at that time. Like you were
mm,
probably gonna, it probably would have been worse in that sense. Because sometimes panic attacks can like lead to like a heart attack or even a stroke like
mhm.
situation if you don't get it done. But I think one key thing in adults is watching people's patterns. I think if we want to specifically talk about culturally, I think with the Haitian community, I noticed with adults, I noticed that their tendency to hoard, that's a big thing. And it's not more so hoarding in a sense of thinking that, like not like dirtiness hoarding, but like sentimental keeping things. Oh, I'm gonna wear this coat to something next year. No, you're not. Um, and also another thing, culturally. I noticed is that people, when they change in their behavior in the sense of all of a sudden, like they just start sharing out of the blue. Like now they're oversharing, they telling you about their life. It's like they had to come to something like, why are you doing this now? Or someone who possibly was you really close to and they're always deflecting. It's always a big deflect in that sense with adults. Like they'll tell you about everybody else's issues but their own. And that's to take the spotlight away from them. And that's a red flag too. Like something's going on. Usually the happy, chipper person, now you're the Debbie Downer telling us about every drama known to man in that sense. And also people regress. You see signs of them not doing the normal things they usually do. Some people they get dolled up, they do their hair, they do their makeup, and then all of a sudden they stop. What happened? Or that person who used to stop by once a week stopped. What happened? Because a lot of people come together specifically on holidays or even like every Saturday, everybody comes to somebody's house and they do like we're gonna have a bars or whatever, like in culture, if you think about it, in Haitian culture, and then they just stop. Like what happened? What changed? And I think those are key things, like watching people's pattern of behavior and then
Mm,
being open and not afraid to ask them what's going on.
what's going on? We have Juanita, welcome. She's watching from Philly. Mion from New York, from Spring Valley, actually.
Hi.
She's our teenagers. Wiener, the term the work is used a lot when discussing therapy and mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe in details um, what the work looks like or is? Thank you. That's a great question. I didn't know
The
this term.
Yeah.
Where did it come?
It
When did
depends.
it start?
I, I don't know who coined the phrase, but a lot of the time people say you have to put the work in to get results, right? So if
Ah,
you're
okay.
not putting the work in, the effort, then there's nothing can change in a sense. But also,
And that makes sense.
yes, so you have to start with yourself. And also you have to understand is when you're doing the work and other people around you are not doing the work they need to do, unfortunately, you cannot let that stop you from doing the own work within yourself. And I always say that because then you have to be like, well, I did the work. Now you need to do the work too. Because then I'm talking about specific systems in that sense. If you just working on yourself, you going through your issues really is not ingrained in other people. It's more so internal. Then you have to do the work first, like solely with yourself. And then everybody should align and be like, okay, they see it coming. But sometimes the work for you to do it is sometimes I tell people if you know one of your vices is when you go to so and so's house, your trigger is this specific person you don't like, then you have to have that sensitive conversation. Because some people associate, the past or a trigger with people. And you have to have that conversation is like, I just appreciate the heads up if so and so is going to be at your house when I come over. I'm not telling you to not have a relationship with them, but as a courtesy, can you let me know so I know how to prepare myself? Because I think a lot of times people don't realize victimization goes a long way. And sometimes you can't run away from possibly the person who victimized you. And I'm not talking about, assault or, it could be another thing. Like it could be like a big argument. You still feel like a victim in the sense of that nature. And also,
Mm,
you have to prepare yourself for accepting disappointment when doing the work because I think a lot of people think because I'm doing the work, it's going to be successful. That's the goal, but you have to know that there might be hiccups along the way in doing the work. And sometimes the work may need to pivot. If you're going and you're doing something for a couple of months, you might max it out. It might not be working for you anymore. And you have to do the shift to something else. And people have to accept not everything lasts forever. I think sometimes I say like when doing the work, from, me, I grew up with my parents, they're married, but as a grown adult, I know majority of my parents' arguments had to do with raising children, and, taking care of them. Like, so I'm not saying, if they didn't have us, they would be happy every day. I'm not saying that, but, I take accountability, like, yeah, as a kid, I was a little too much sometimes. So, and I think that's part of the work, is the acknowledgement part of that, and knowing that, you know, you play a role in other people's, mental health psyches in that sense. Like, and you have to understand that. But the work is like a big thing. It's that it is get work, and you have to know like where you want to start, where you want to go. You might have to pivot. There might be a little, disappointment on along the way. You might have to drop some people off. You might gain some new people and continuously do it in that sense.
Most of the time, doing the work is very, very painful.
Yes, it is. It's not
It's
easy.
very painful. You need to be able to withstand the pain sometimes
Mhm.
to get through it. Push through. Just because it hurts
Yes.
doesn't mean it's it's still helping
Hmm.
even when it's hurt, because you need to be able to get through it and know how to push through the pain to get the result that you need. It's almost like exercising. Um,
You
you
gotta push
know,
through.
you have to push through for the last minute that seems like, oh my God, it's never gonna
Yeah.
end.
Yeah, but but when it finishes, you working towards a result, in that sense, and the result is positive. You're healthier.
Yes.
Your breathing is better. You might get a nicer physique in a sense. So it's like you're working
Blood
towards
pressure goes
something.
down.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, definitely so.
Yes, the work is and that's the thing about us people. I think that's why we have a lot of the divorce rate is so high, because we don't, some people try to stick it out, and but you're sticking it out without any help, without any consistency, good solid help.
Hmm.
Um, and the minute it start hurting, you want to bail out.
Yeah,
Nobody wants to feel pain.
yeah, no one does.
Um, so it's important to know sometimes the work is painful.
Yeah.
Just hang out a little bit. How does therapy help in understanding and managing emotions better? That's a big one for me.
Yes. So
Um,
it's called self-regulation. You want to self-regulate. Yes.
self-regulation.
Um,
So, how do we do that? Somebody was telling me that when you go through something and you get very upset and all your hormone is out of whack, it takes 48 hours to settle down. Does that make sense? It was a
Probably.
trauma person.
Yeah, it probably so, because just because you're not immediately thinking about it, maybe it's manifesting itself in another way. Like, say hypothetically, yesterday you had a big situation happen, big argument, but you woke up, you're fine. And then you're doing the little things, your everyday things, and you realize, where's the car key? Now the car key's an issue. And then you're frustrated, you're yelling, and it's like, the car key didn't do nothing to you. And you possibly taking that situation and adding it to something that, has nothing to do with the other situation. So it's more so
Hmm.
of that, like, you have to know your emotions in that sense. You have to check yourself. Me, I do it all the time. Every time I go somewhere in my head, I'm like, about to walk in here, say hello, even if you don't want to, smile and keep it pushing, and know that you control the situation in that sense. And that's coming from an adult. The reason I have to do that is because I come from, well, we come from, I should say, from a dynamic where, for me, I think my anxiety also stems from being told I have to say hi to adults, and by greeting them, I have to give them a kiss on the cheek. And as a kid, I always told my mother, I don't want to do that. And she says, you have to. And I was like, no, I don't want to. It would be like a whole fight with her. Whole fight. You have to say hi, you have to salute people, da 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 da. So as an adult, I hold the narrative. So I may not come to you. I may hug you now. I hug, whatever. I just don't feel I should give everybody that connection of myself. I don't know if I was like a young genius in my
You
head.
were older beyond your years.
Yes. And I just associated it with like, I don't know, like nastiness. Like, why would you have to do this in that sense? But it also prepared me that knowing that my mom heard me and she set structure with me and set a boundary. And then eventually, when she saw that it was really bothering me, she literally pulled me, like grabbed me, I should say, and she said, give them this, give them the cheek. And that's how she was able to appease it. And she looks like a good Haitian mother. My child
Mother.
is Sally is everybody. In that sense. Cause you
For
don't
those
want to
of
have
you who
yeah,
doesn't know, Haitians kiss people, especially if you're
yeah,
a child,
yeah,
you kiss each other. That's how you
yeah,
greet each other.
yes.
Not so much with a hug, but with a kiss on the cheek.
Yes.
And if there's 50 of them sitting and you have to line
Have
yourself
to
up and
say hi.
kiss
And you
every
cannot
single
skip.
person,
Cannot skip.
if you don't do that, it looks bad on your parents because they raised you wrong.
Yes.
Ganon ti moun mal élevé.
Yes.
Um, what kind of children are you raising here? They don't
Yes.
greet you, they don't say nothing, they just
Yes.
walk up here. It's a
Yes.
whole thing.
Yes to everything you said.
So to give you guys a background, it's we hate it with a passion, but hey, and believe it or not, now it's almost like it's so automatic for me, especially when
Hmm.
you know people, see the people that you know. Um, it becomes automatic, not with everybody.
Yes.
It becomes automatic with certain people.
Hmm.
I didn't know you had all that gut in you, Sherry.
I didn't know either, but my mom remind because she was like, you always complaining. And I think I would literally get frustrated and I'd be like, "Ugh." So like that's my emotions coming out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in me, it's like you have to like be your own cheerleader in a sense, in that
Yes.
sense. So you know, like you sometimes you even know, like if you are in a household where you share duties cooking, right? And you know your partner says, I'm gonna make this, and you be like, oh my God, every time they make it, it's gonna be burned. I don't want to be disappointed. It is like, oh, let me prepare myself to be like, like in that sense. So it's like more so of you have to know what what pokes the bear, and the bear is you in that sense. And sometimes you can't control it. I always tell people, one day you're gonna be like, you're just gonna get frustrated, you're gonna scream. But you need to try your best to not scream in front of certain people. When I say and scream in front of certain people, like I always tell people, you have to be mindful about who's around. It's not only children, it's also about respect of other people, because you might trigger other people because of your outburst. And I always say, if you always yelling, then something is wrong with that. Like you need to check what was your past. Like, what did everybody yell where you grew up? Do you feel like you need to yell for power and control of a situation? In that sense. Also, why are you reverting to crying about everything? Like, why is it a cry? It just fell on the floor. Why are you emotional? Like, try not to cry with everything because then they be like, oh, don't tell her she's gonna cry. Like, so it's more so of you have to self-regulate your emotions. Sometimes you have to remove yourself. In that sense, I know for me, it took me, of course, years to like get skills, but like I know I pride myself is like I know how I come across. And I think if you're not in tune with how you come across, then don't be surprised. You can't be surprised about what people say back to you. You hold it in that sense. Sometimes, I might let it go a little bit and I might show them like what people usually say, like, she's a little grr, whatever like that. But it's more so of you have control of that. Also, you have to do a lot with self-regulation. It's a lot of work. You have to, check your tone. You have to be mindful, very mindful with your tone. You also have to
Yeah,
be,
you have
yeah,
so much to say.
Yeah. You have to be
That
mindful with
was
your
years ago.
language. You have to be mindful with your language because the reason is I feel like us having this conversation, we can use certain words, but you also have to think about the audience. Not everybody is possibly going to understand certain things. So you have to not say dumb it down, but you have to make it relatable to everybody in that sense. And then also,
Experience into it because
yes.
that really helps people understand. So even the professionals, I guess that, and I wanted to ask you, why did you decide to go into this field when I was talking to you over Thanksgiving? Um, I left, I said, I should have asked her, why did she decide to go into this field? Because to me, it would keep me sad all the time to be listening to people all day long with their sad
Hmm.
stories. So what's in you that wanted that geared you toward that?
I like helping people. Um, and I felt like for me, I fell into it. Um, One key thing about me is I think I fell into it because of Philadelphia. Um, Living in Philadelphia for college and working with vulnerable people who don't have a voice in a sense because I grew up suburban, like I had a voice. I always thought I had a voice. The only thing is that I'm a black female, right? But I always like I'm going to persevere in that sense. But to see people who look just like me feel less than me made me realize I need to help people have a voice. And sometimes I can be that person who speaks for them, whether it's through a referral, a recommendation for something, right? Or I could be the voice that helps them create their voice in that sense and pulling it out of them to build up to process things.
Where did you come across these people? Because you were in college.
Mm-hmm.
So did you do like internship in Philly? Is that it?
So yeah, so I did a work study, and my work study was with Trevor's Place. I don't know if it still exists, but that's how much it stayed with me. But it was with Trevor's Place. It was a woman's family shelter, and I directly worked with the children. So when they used to get off school, I was there to basically provide support, like an after school. I did not They didn't have me do academics, even though that's what I got hired for. They actually had me, basically get them motivated and want to talk. And we would like go outside, play basketball, or we would just sit down and talk, or, ask. And that's how I got a gist of, life is not the best for a lot of people. And how can you make how can you help motivate people who are disenfranchised to want more for themselves, especially when they're children and they can't access it? They have to have their parent access it for them, and they're limited in that sense. So it was like doing that for I think I did it for 2 years specifically. And then like and happy like they asked for us to ask me and the girls I did it with to come back and seeing how they are, because I think my when I graduated I actually bumped into two of them and they were doing well with themselves. So it's more so of the aspect of wanting to help people. And I think it's also ingrained in me that someone helped, my parents, whether it was a relative, like they didn't come here with anything, in the sense of that nature. All they had was family in that sense. And then watching my parents help people. So I know like my mom always was a voice at her job. She was a union representative. She would always get calls from coworkers asking them this is what happened. What should I say? Who should I call? And these is probably things people don't even know if people on this talk about my parents. My father also, my dad was the go-to person for us. He always was that parent who would speak up and help people in that sense. And both of my parents were in helping professions. So I think it was just destined in me to do it. And
Yeah.
also I think my faith. I might not, scream it to the loud, to the rafters about religion, but having faith in something. And it helps me know that I can do this in that sense. Like, when people tap into what you're good at and you lead with it, go for it. And I think that's what I did. And I got asked this question, like, do I love my job today? And I said, yes, I
Sounds
do.
like excited all the time.
Yeah, yeah. I do love my job. I love what I do. And it could change tomorrow, but as long as I'm helping somebody, I like what I do. Or should I say love what I do, basically.
I think I was reading something from France. At what point do you consider referring a client you have been seeing in a while for psychotherapeutic med management?
That's a good question.
Mhm.
Um,
Dr. France, our cousin.
I know that's why he asked that. Because you have to refer to him. Um, Basically, a lot of the times I'll see, depending on what symptoms they're showing, specifically, majority of the time is more for me in the practice I deal with is usually with people showing bipolar traits and signs of depression, usually. Um, After talk therapy, you basically keep a record. If I see after a 60 to 90-day period, there's like no significant changes, usually at the 60-day mark, I'll say, I'll introduce psycho medications in the beginning, but usually by the 60-day mark, I'll say, you possibly need to consider this. This is, I give them like a progress report in a sense of their progress. And then I'll offer them with referrals at the 90-day. Sometimes they can go to their own provider. Sometimes, like their provider will give them like a short term until they could get connected to someone. But usually, we'll connect them to, a psychiatrist or a psychiatric nurse practitioner specifically that can write them something. And then what I do is if they do get prescribed it, then usually it's a low dose, and then they'll eventually, and I know the background, then I'll encourage them, like, just be mindful. This is what can happen. Is you have any questions? These are the questions you should ask them about. What happens if you need more? They're probably going to up you by 0.5, things of that nature. Communication, like also coaching them about it, and also know that it takes time as well. But usually between 60 to 90 days, if it's significantly no change and I feel like the person is stuck, usually that's when I would do it. Usually around like the 3 month mark. Um, Usually for adults, usually I can grace teenagers is usually after averagely 3 months. I usually do the referral, but adults is averagely like probably more like 4 to 5, depending. Because usually adults are very fickle about taking medications in that sense. Like I'm not I don't get nothing from them getting on medication besides helping support them. It's not like I get something from the provider. It's more so of having their options. But usually that's when I do it. There's a conversation too. So yeah.
So at one point, after a good 3 months, if there's no progress or getting worse, you refer them to, now when they start the meds, do they still keep therapy?
Yes. Mhm.
It's both. Okay.
Yeah, because technically speaking, the medication provider is not meeting with them for talk therapy. They're basically meeting them to manage the medication, right? So it's the person is responsible to report back and say, sometimes it depends on the provider. They might want them to take it for solidly for 2 weeks and come back to them, see how it is for a month. If no changes, let's up it. Maybe this is not your medication. Everybody's biochemistry is different in that sense of how they react to certain things, and then do it that way. And then what I do is I'll track it in my notes, and I'd be like, if I notice a difference. And also if it's like a depression thing, usually I make people do questionnaires in the sense of their rate, how they're feeling in certain areas of their life and how they're functioning. And then we'll do the compare and contrast. And also, you have to hope they are taking the medication and they're not skipping. Because usually, if someone's doing very well on medication and then they abruptly stop, you can see it. de-ravel a little bit. And as a person who sees people usually averagely once to every twice a week, if someone's doing really well, I don't see them, I probably see them for every 3 weeks, because eventually your goal for therapy is, to wean down in a sense. Like you don't need to see someone every week in that sense. So it's more so of tracking it that way and also making yourself available in that sense. If something does happen, they can, is an emergency, being aware of who they can call and things of that nature. But medication is usually like the last of the things I, refer to, but it happens.
My primary care physician
Mm-hmm.
would prescribe me something for depression.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much the therapist, not, I never been to a psychiatrist, but she would do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so is that a normal thing that the primary care, if it's mild, I guess she can?
Yes, she can. She can.
Okay.
But eventually, she with due diligence for specialty, because she's a general practitioner, I'm assuming, she should refer you to someone who's focused on that. Because then they can give you the attention and the medication management, because she's not dealing with that all the time. Most likely, she's probably dealing, with high blood pressure medication more so than, prescribing depression medication. And I think that's the key thing for providers to bridge that. Sometimes you can get prescribed your PCP to give you certain medication because of the relationship you have with them, but also a PCP have to be knowledgeable as well. Eventually, insurance might stop him or her from prescribing it because that's not their specialty in that sense. So they'd be like, well, we need a prior authorization, and the prior authorization might be recommended for you to see, a psychiatrist or a psychiatric nurse practitioner to evaluate the necessity for this specific medication.
With all that being said about therapy, I think it's important. Do you think therapy helps like basic relationship skills, communication skills? Because sometimes I think we don't have the tools to deal with all that we deal with in our relationship, whether it's romantic relationship, friendship relationship, um, mother-daughter dynamics is usually very weird.
Mm-hmm.
Even female dynamics, female friendship
Yeah.
is can be difficult. Um, sometimes you see it happening all around you all the time, and you feel the funniness, and you're like, is it me or? And I like to do self-examines. I self-examine myself because I don't want to, what I don't like to see in others, I don't want to project it on others. So
Got
I'm
you.
like, me, do I need to do something different to hold friendship around, especially with female, um, any type of relationship? And I'm sure I'm not the only one talking, dealing with these different relationship highs and lows. Um, how does therapy can therapy help with that?
Well, therapy can help in giving you the fundamentals of that, in a sense of asking you what's your expectations for certain types of relationships. What do you want out of a friend? And what you need to do is apply that in real life, in a sense of, if we're going to use, friendship, for example. If, you've been friends with someone for like 20 years, sometimes that friendship has maxed out. It's not feeding you anymore, or possibly them either. And you have to make the decision of either slowly backing away or ending a friendship. And I think that's hard, especially like, you guys were friends for so long. Like, what happened? Sometimes it happens. The same way you have a divorce is the same way you have a friendship come to an end. Like, some things come to an end. And I think what people I notice is they don't talk about their intentions for relationships or friendships. And I feel like are you courting me in a sense to be my girlfriend? Like we're gonna hang out, have a good time, travel, or are you courting me because you just it just looks good for us to be friends? In a sense, it's not beneficial. It's just something to say, oh yeah, we're cool. I know her. Or especially with romantic relationships, what is your intentions? Like, what are we doing this for? Are we on the same page? Because I think people lack those skills in that sense. Because I feel like a lot of times, I think me building friendships, I think a key thing is for people who went to college, college set me up for building friendships because real friendships, because that's when you go, what you want to do for a living? Oh, that's my interest. Oh, where are you from? What your parents do? Like college kids, when I was in college, they were asking me all these questions. I was like, why do you care? And then it's because we're future oriented. And I think versus high school is because you live up the street from me, we have to be friends. It's convenient. Versus college, we're thinking in the future. And that's why a lot of people say we're college sweethearts, in that sense. Oh, we met in college. And like a lot of people I know who are married, they met in that integral part of their life. And I think sometimes we have to know, like, what are your intentions? I know just I could use me for example, like my relationship, he showed intention. That's why we're together. He blatantly explained what he's expecting in a relationship, what he wants, what he's not going to tolerate, and where he sees us going. And vice versa. And I think whoever knows me in my relationship sees that exude in that sense. Is it going to last forever? I don't know. I don't predict the future, but I can never say we never had a conversation. We never set our intentions, our boundaries, or how it looks like for us and how we're going to move in our relationship. And I think that's what's lacking. People are scared to have the conversation. Or if you're scared, you possibly lack the skills to do it. And that's why you should come to therapy to learn those in that sense. Like,
Um,
that's just me.
so matter of fact, um, I remember talking to Maya. She says, I prayed for my husband. I said,
Hmm.
my husband. She says, I pray for my future husband. I want my husband to be a certain way, to have certain things. My generation, we don't pray for husbands. We just go out. I like you. I think we can make it. Let's do it.
Yes, let's just do it.
You guys are so matter of fact, very intentional about everything. I tell you, I'm so in awe with this generation.
Hmm.
Um, Flan says, thank you for your response. I need to collaborate with you sometimes. I'm very impressed by your ability. I do feel I do feel a combination of therapy and medication management work best for my majority of patients with
Hmm.
depression, anxiety, and bipolar. Welcome, Brianna. Brianna's here. Sharice Wilson, welcome. Sharice is here. We have a good turnout. I guess this is a good time because usually I don't have that many people, but they watch later. This is a good time to have this. That's awesome. Okay, what role does confidentiality play in therapeutic relationship? I think we covered that earlier. How about the communication piece? You did say you communicate from with your partner and lay out the intention for the relationship. So that's
Hmm.
very important. A lot of people gonna go on the first date. It almost feels
An interview?
like an interview. I don't like that. I'm like, why can't you just relax and have coffee?
Yeah.
Watch the birds and watch these waves and
Yeah.
really and things will come up
Yeah,
naturally.
definitely so. You don't have to talk about everything. You like like the first date or something. I think that's a little bit you might scare the person in
Right.
that sense. But I just know from like dealing with, I do have women in my practice who, they are at an age where they want to find a husband and they're very intentional and oh, I met so and so. I'm like, I'm in love 2 months later. I'm like, 2 months? And I'm like, what's love? What do you love about this person? It's like breaking it down. Like, I'm not saying you can't meet someone in 2 months and fall in love, but it's more so of what does that look like? And is this person in love with you too, the same way in that sense? And I think what it's lacking in the community is good examples of working relationships, in a sense. And I'm not saying they have to be married. You don't have to be married to have a good, solid working relationship. You can
Yeah.
literally just be two people together and it just works for you. And I think if you do not have realistic relationships around you, and when I say realistic, like people have highs, people have lows, but their highs outweigh the lows. I think people, do need that in that sense. I know for me, like I always say, like, her. I think Crystal and my cousin Crystal's relationship with her husband, I can, as a witness to it, whatever, like, it's just from like for someone in my age group, like it's like wow to me. Like some people don't think that's normal. And my friends who observe it don't know them. They be like, where did she find him? And I was like, sometimes you just meet your person. In that sense, I don't know what to say to that. In that sense. And I think when people compliment you in a sense of they notice your relationship without even not knowing who you are, in a sense of like the ins and out of it, and they can acknowledge what it is, I think that's great. And I think sometimes people need to like appreciate that, appreciate their partner. Like I never want someone to not feel appreciated, in that sense, and vice versa. And I think that's what's lacking. People don't appreciate things. Like appreciate your partner made it 20 years with you, like appreciate that, and appreciate they sticking by you too. In that sense, nothing is perfect, but we're here. Like what are we going to do to the next level? And also evolution. Like your 21-year-old self is not going to be your 45-year-old self. And how are you going to evolve in the relationship dynamics with each other? Like, because if you don't put the work in, I'm using the work in, it's not going to happen, in that sense. And I'm very observant, even though it's not like I'm like talking to the people, but I observe people's dynamics when I'm around them. They probably don't realize I do. I don't go based on social media to look at people's lives. I think because it's what you want me to know, um in that sense. But when I'm around people and I see how they interact with their loved ones and things of that nature, I pay attention to it. I pay attention how people are caring and how people are attentive to each other. And and that makes me want to like be like, oh, okay, I see how it is. Like I see where you coming from with that, in that sense. So yeah.
Okay. Um, so therapy can play a big part in how we interact with each other. I knew I had to, I
Mm-hmm.
love intentionality because when you're moving so fast
Mm-hmm.
through life, people has
Mm-hmm.
work, people has school, you literally have to have intentionality. You have, if you don't have a partner, you have to put some time. It's funny you said, Crystal, I remember when I asked her, where did you guys meet? At the time, it was unheard of for people to meet online and really
Yeah.
got it. I think it was on their wedding day. I said, where did you guys meet? When we were away for the wedding. It was before the wedding. She says, online. She says, can you believe it? I said, I can believe it.
Mm-hmm. They went online. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are single people that are sitting around and do nothing to try to get the partner that they want to get. There are some people that are very intentional and really put the work in
Mm-hmm.
to have their partner. So that's awesome. Um, let's look at, I'm scared to touch this computer because it might go berserk, but I had some stuff, some numbers, some stats
Stats.
that I
Okay.
like to always cover with the experts while I have you guys. Let's see. If this was in 2020, where they say that 8% of men receive therapy or counseling in the last 12 months, 12% of women receive therapy. I wasn't surprised because I know men do not like that.
Hmm.
Um, You don't want to, somebody told me, I don't want to go into somebody's couch and lay down and spill my gut. Who does that?
Mm-hmm.
So it's women that loves to talk. So I wasn't surprised to see the numbers. So we need to do better. I don't know how to help the men get it that their mental health is as important as their
Mm-hmm.
physical. I, as not just because they make fun of us when we take mental day, when we go out with our girlfriends, when we go out with it's a girl night out, it's a girl thing. They don't realize how important it is for our mental health, and they should try to do the same, I believe. They do try to do things, but I don't believe they talk to each other like we women talk to each other. Um, 6 million, is that 6 million men suffer from depression per year
Yes.
in the US? Who male depression often goes undiagnosed because they don't even want to tell the doctor they're not feeling themselves. Um,
And also, I know this is from Mental Health of America, but I know a lot of the times is when they get statistics about men is usually from incarceration, about mental health, because the whole environment, they usually pivot on that information to get more statistics about men because it's in a control environment per se.
okay. So they have panic disorders, agoraphobia, am I
Mm-hmm.
saying it right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, these numbers are not surprising to me because they are pretty
Oh, what's that mean?
thing that I wanted to see. And to see this number. I wanted to see the numbers for black and white. I was very surprised. Oh God. I need to slow down with the clicking.
Mhm.
That was my baby girl. um, People of color are less likely to receive mental health care than white people. Also, I wasn't surprised to see that. Um, what I was surprised to hear is that mental illness is generally higher in the white community compared to the black community. Why do you think that is?
Because I think, white people report more, they express
Ah,
more, in the sense of, I'm having a bad day. It's affecting my life. Also, I think the numbers went up. I know in New York specifically, people forget like mental illness has different categories. I know for specifically DSM-5, now gambling is a diagnosis. Then also PTSD numbers skyrocketed after 9/11. A lot of people in 9/11 were white, in that sense, and who suffer and who did these class action lawsuits and things of that nature. A lot of the firefighters and things of that nature, the first responders, are part of that number. So usually the number comes due to who's reporting it, and usually Black people don't report it unless it's connected to some type of entitlement they can get, allegedly, people of color. So if I report I have bipolar and I know I can get possibly a benefit such as SSI, then I'm going to do it. Versus the white counterpart reports it because he knows that he's going through something and, it's affecting his life per se. And he's assimilated and socialized to express his feelings possibly, in that sense. And I think the numbers, I would like to see the numbers eventually, probably the next 10 years, now that, a lot of more people are coming out, in Black and Brown communities talking about mental health and its effects. I think the whole dynamic that's going on politically too, is affecting that amongst, people and the traumas that are going on and the changes and the shifts, specifically. So I like to see those numbers because I think it will go up significantly in that sense.
That would be interesting because these numbers, if you're looking at this one here, it's 2020, it takes a minute for these
Yeah.
um numbers to come through. 23.9% of white adults experience mental illness annually compared to African. Um, and I was looking at this, the mix or multiracial.
Yes,
There
I
does,
don't.
yeah,
I guess is they it's not black and white. It could be like other things. I'm assuming because unless they
right.
identify more as something else, so like that number could go sway these numbers across in that sense. So that that's significant in itself.
And Asian is the lowest.
Hmm.
That was interesting to me.
Well,
Um,
Pacific Islander Asian and Pacific Islanders are they have very strict social norms. So I'm not shocked that's low.
let's see if there's any more questions on Facebook.
Hmm.
Facebook, are you with me? You're still there? Yeah, everybody's still here. Well, what's my next question so that we can wrap it up?
Okay.
Um, I want to make sure we answer all the questions. What can a person expect? Session? How can someone? So I think we will answer most of these questions already. So now we are going to open up. Let's open it again so that we can see. Here we go. You can see it. We didn't talk about this one. They were saying that there's an increase of visibility of providers of colors.
Hmm.
Um, I think the whole system pivot after COVID. Um, I'm not sure where they come from, but a lot of people, it seems like there's a lot of like therapists, people of color out there trying to reach out to these, like you said, the people of color do not report. And it could be because, of lack of resources, or it could be a
Hmm.
number of things. But I think a big piece of it was they could relate to the white therapists and psychiatrists.
Hmm.
So that was good to see that this is taken care of and more people are out there helping our community. Kudos to
Hmm.
you guys.
Also, a lot of like the disenfranchised communities, a lot of people don't understand like therapy is literally, historically pivoted to market toward, the white Anglo-Saxon person to do it. So a lot of providers in inner communities are white. So in these clinics that majority of colored people are going to, they are white, like in a sense of like the people or service are black and brown, but the service providers are white because they want to get their hours or they want to get the grassroots and build, eventually take their practice somewhere else.
Yeah. So it's encouraging to see that they are hiring, like you said, your practice is all black women.
Yes,
How many times I said, can I have a black therapist, please?
yes. And people say,
So
and people say that some people flat out say, I want to see a black female and specifically, and that's fine. I feel like for me, I want to see someone that I can possibly relate to, but just because I'm a black female therapist doesn't mean you're going to relate to me. And I think that's the disappointment factor too, in that sense of when you do not meet what they think that you should be for them in that sense. And sometimes, and I always tell people, like, someone's like, are you for everybody? I was like, I'm not from everybody. I would never want someone to sit across from me, whether it's virtually or on a couch, and continuously see me for months, and I'm not servicing them to what they need in that sense. Because I'm not for everybody. If someone else in the practice is for you, then they're for you too. Like, we refer out all the time. I'll always tell people, you need to find who's the right person for you in that sense.
Anybody has any questions for our expert tonight? Although we've been answering questions all throughout
Yeah.
the talk. Yeah. So, Shireen, would you encourage people? I don't know if you are willing to give this, if they need, um, just in case they need something to have some references, if somebody needs to call you, if there's a number that's not gonna be bombarding, I doubt that it will bombard you.
Don't worry, I have a number that I give out so people don't bombard me. If you have my real number, you'd be like, "What number is she giving? This is my business number." In that sense, I have to get it. Hold on, I can give the email usually faster. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think, yeah, but I always tell people good referral sources for therapy is your insurance provider. Sometimes people don't know it. If you please create a login with your insurance provider so you can access your insurance information on your computer, and you can select the gender of your provider, the race of your provider. If you have someone who's up to date, a provider that's up to date. I know for me, a lot of people find us through Psychology Today, through the search, and you read our bios, things of that nature. We try to accommodate everyone, but not everybody says it. Like, my specialty is not young children, so I don't see very young children. I think that's a very specialized field to deal with, like a 7-year old dealing with issues versus like a 14-year old who can really express themselves versus a 7-year old who's possibly they don't have the language as of yet per se comparable to a 14-year old in that sense. And also knowing that contracting too, I always say make sure you contract with your therapist, like set boundaries, rules. And also, especially for me, when I deal with young people, I always tell my young people, I meet with them and their parents first, so everybody knows the rules of this. A young person does not have my number, like in the sense of to communicate me. They can't text me. They have to go through their parent, or they have to wait till the session comes. The only time I involve their parent is if they're saying something that I'm fearful they'll harm themselves or somebody else. And that's when I have to pull mom and dad or whoever the custodial parent is at the time. Also, one key thing I want to say is therapy is not for everybody, but I feel like everyone should get a dose of it. I think another way people don't have to go to talk therapy, individual, is possibly through groups. There's a lot of wellness conferences. There's a lot of, people who do, sometimes people have these, elaborate self-care brunches. Like, I think going to these things can open you up and meeting with other people and network, and you can gain the knowledge to open your eyes to more opportunity in the therapeutic world, in that sense. So I think that's very key in that.
That's good information to have.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful information to that. To recap, how do we help people? How do we understand or see or know when to help, tell, at least suggest to somebody to get some help? Um, you said it's when you see a change in their behavior, a
Mm-hmm.
change in their routine, a change in the way they used to do things. Sometimes somebody who used to like to get dressed and made up all day, all the time, stop doing that. That's a red flag. Some people stop wanting to shower or they don't want to deal
Mm-hmm.
with the chemical. And so all these things we need to pay attention to. And new parents need to really
Mm-hmm.
normalize therapy. They need to normalize mental health, mental wellness,
Hmm.
um, so that when they become an adult, it's not a big deal. It's not shameful for them to seek
Yes.
the help
Yeah,
they need.
definitely so.
So,
Take the
in a
shame out of
nutshell,
it.
yes. So, if there's not any more questions, we're gonna end. I think we went
Oh, we went
pretty
a little bit
far.
far.
That we're not. Shereen, I cannot thank you enough. You are doing it. I am so proud of you,
Thank
cousin.
you very much for having me.
Yes, thank you for saying yes. And um, as you know, mental health is never ends. So
Yes.
I might need you again if something else, if there's another, you know, wave of something come up and we
Yes.
need experts to come and talk to people.
Yes.
Um, Kia said it takes a village. Yes, it does take a village.
Hmm.
Pay attention to our people in our surroundings so that we can be helpful to each other.
Hmm. Definitely
So
so.
support each other. Yes. And everybody needs support, the men, the women, the children.
Yes, everybody, even dogs. Dogs be sad too. People forget that. I don't know why. They don't see me, but I've been saying like animals get sad too.
Thank you so much for your time. Your father's a doctor, your mother's a nurse, and you were a whole therapist for the family. Thank you so much. Thank you. I love you. Give
Love
my
you
love
too.
to everybody, and we will be in touch,
Yes,
especially
thank you.
personally. Thank
Bye.
you, Facebook. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you,
Um,
Facebook. I forgot.
yes, thank you, Facebook. We will be, of course, posting this after we clean it up and hopefully fix some of the stuff. Joanne says the pets are on antidepressant. You gotta be kidding me. Um, yes, thank you so much. We will post this on YouTube. Those of you, please like these videos on YouTube when I share the link again. Um, and let's do this. I put whatever email Shireen gives me, I put the information on there for you
Okay.
guys if you have questions. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.